Hey, here's an update. We are now in the completed form of our teardown, which means I'm done taking stuff apart. Okay. I was able to hook up the compressor to a hose and blow all the dust and most of the gunk out of there, so it's at least a little cleaner. There's not a lot of debris in there. I took out the fuel reservoir, which is over here. Now, like I said before, keep your parts laid out with all the screws nearby. This is our fuel reservoir, and this is what came out of it. You see all that nasty nonsense that was in the bottom of the gas tank. Now the bottom of the gas tank is not pristine. It still has some issues with corrosion. If you look down in here, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, there we go. There is some corrosion, but I did scrape down in there with a screwdriver or like this pencil to try and see if that stuff's loose. And no grooves get made. So that's, it's not moving around in there. It's not pristine. I did put in some gasoline and swished it around in there. I also have a gasoline additive, which is meant to clean gas tanks, and swish that around in there to get any debris that was loose and in the bottom of the tank out. And we can put a little gas additive in there to keep the engine clean. Now, the fuel line, which is here, has its own inline filter, and that's our little friend, the filter. Now, the fuel filter is on back order, so I need to stick with this one when I put this all back together, because I don't want to leave it apart for too long, because honestly, when you take something apart and leave it apart, it's harder to remember how things go back together. But this gives us a good opportunity to see how the mechanisms work. I had to pull the front housing here to get at the last anchor for the fuel line. But you can see here, you can see that's the throttle, which controls the little valve in here, which shows how much fuel goes into this chamber that gets fired for combustion. On the other side, I disconnected the lines here. We know that these two electrical lines need to get hooked here. I checked the connection for the primer bulb. I'm going to replace that next. And I anchored down the valve cover. Now I also pulled the oil, and you'll notice the oil is black. It is much darker than the oil we pulled out of the other engine, so this certainly was a warranted item to get that done. That's why the entire unit is propped up to allow that oil to drain. So now we're at the stage where we start putting things back together. I'm going to pull this primer bulb, put a new one of those that'll go in first. Then what I'll do is we'll re-anchor the fuel reservoir, and then we'll get all of this mechanism carefully back together into the jigsaw puzzle that it is, anchor that down. Then we can start adding the covers around, and then the rest of the apparatus that go to the machine. Then we can fill it up with fluids and see if we can get it to start. While I will not have the electric start, the electric starter comes out with a total of 4 bolts. 2 bolts up here for the switch, and 2 bolts down here for the starter mechanism. If I get this thing prepped up well enough, I might be able to use the pull start to start it. So I'm going to give that a shot. But this is at the end of our teardown, and we got to go back to work.